So hi, I'm Coach Carla. I'm a fitness coach and entrepreneur with Healthitude. I am also a co-owner of Equilibrium Fitness in beautiful downtown West Seattle. And Dave Farrow is my guest here. He's a memory expert. And because I'm not a memory expert, I'm going to read a little information about Dave Farrow. He's the two-time Guinness World Record holder for the greatest memory. He has been featured guest expert in over 2,000 interviews in the media, including the Today Show, Live with Regis and Kelly, Steve Harvey, Every Channel, and many others. To earn the world record, Mr. Farrow recalled the exact order of 59 decks of shuffled playing cards using the Farrow Memory Method. This method was originally invented to combat Dave's dyslexia and ADHD, and is now a unique memory system backed by a double-blind neuroscience study at McGill University. Yay! So, Dave, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. This is a lot of fun. Now, you've been looking at the memory tournament manual for a while and trying some of these techniques, so tell us your thoughts.
Yes, I actually was, I read it cover to cover, first of all. I do have this, and I haven't gone through it just yet. My homework isn't done yet, but I was able to memorize all 20 items on the random item list. I was able to figure out that 0 through 9, how to figure out the numbers. That was really super cool. The little story, the anecdotal story about the 1,000, doing pi to the 1,000 number.
We're gonna tell people about that story, yeah.
So I'm gonna tell you something. One of my biggest embarrassments is the fact that I can't remember even my best friend's name to introduce them because I get so stressed out about introducing them to a group. I'm trying to remember the group of people, and then I just forget my best friend's name. It's humiliating. So I'm an actress. I want to be able to remember my script like that. Mm-hmm. I want to remember people's names and not be embarrassed anymore. I want to remember where my keys are or my cell phone are. Mm-hmm. And I followed some of your methods to be able to ignite that superhuman memory. But I'm by far no expert whatsoever. So I'm going to shut up and let you talk.
Oh, you're an expert in a lot of things. But yeah, no, memory is my big passion in life. I do this training because I know what it's like to struggle with your memory, you know? Can you hear me okay? Is it?
Yeah, it's perfect.
Oh, I get it. Okay. All right. I'm just doing a little feedback over here. So I know what it's like to really struggle with your memory. I was diagnosed with ADHD and dyslexia when I was a kid. And here is the big bombshell that I would like to tell people that just changes absolutely everything. Memory is a skill, and you don't need repetition in order to memorize. That's one of the biggest mistakes. So you, for example, you're an actress, you want to memorize your lines. You don't need to repeat them over and over and over and over and over to memorize them. There's actually another way. And you know, because you went through the book, that it's more of a creative way. You come up with kind of silly pictures in your head. And I could actually share with you how to adapt that to memorizing your lines as well, because I've worked with a lot of actors on that. But essentially what it is your brain really likes to have stories. It really likes to have imagery. It really likes to have other things going on. Another thing your brain really, really enjoys is when there's something wild or crazy that happens. I usually refer to it as the tiger in the jungle. If you think that our brains, if you think back to hunter-gatherer times, you know, times with cavemen and women, and our brains are fundamentally haven't changed much since those very primitive times. So a lot of the problems that we have, like stress, anxiety, a lot of the social issues we have, even you know, drug addiction and things like that, from a neurological perspective, have actually been traced back to the fact that we are primitive ancestors living in a modern world, right? So my brain is really good. All of our brains are really good at hunting and gathering, and yet we're doing taxes and other, you know, other stuff, which sucks. So here is what your brain really likes to do. And essentially, I usually think of my program as a way to adapt the modern world to what your brain really, really enjoys. So if I'm talking to a bunch of students, for example, in colleges, and they're studying for their exam, your brain is really not good at focusing on the same thing for 8 hours or 6 hours studying. We know from charts and lots of studies on this that most people, when they're studying information, they're memorizing information, they're going to remember maybe the first 10 minutes and the last 10 minutes, and the stuff in the middle, they have about a 10% chance of memorizing it. Yeah, it's called the primary and tertiary or primary and recency principle. The first thing and the last thing that you hear is what you tend to remember. Have you ever had that experience?
Oh, yeah.
I feel like I want to interact with you a bit more than just do a lecture.
Yeah, and also have noted that first thing, a little more challenging, but the last thing is always something that I'm remembering. And even when I message something to somebody, they generally answer the very last question. The middle question.
Yeah, you get that too. We tend to pay attention. Well, here's why this happens. This might blow your mind. I call it the tiger in the jungle. This is kind of my analogy, okay? So you're a hunter-gatherer. You're walking through the jungle, right? And you see a tree and a rock and a little bush and another tree, lovely stream, a tiger right there, another tree, another rock, another like path going off in the corner. And now, which one of those things are you going to pay attention to most?
The scary things.
The tiger, of course. Like the tiger is the thing that's going to stick. You won't even get to the other stuff. You won't even get to the tree. You won't even get to the anything. You're going to pay attention to the tiger that's in the jungle. And in fact, if we did not do that immediately, we would not probably not be here, because human beings would have been eaten by all the tigers. We would not have survived. So we have this amazing ability to memorize something the first time. We just don't think of that as memory. But you can memorize, so you'll memorize think of if you've ever had a stressful experience, maybe a car accident or something, some sort of crisis, and you remember the where, the what, the who, provided you didn't get a head injury, you remember all sorts of details, what the color of the car was, all sorts of things. And a lot of these things really stick in your mind. It's the same sort of tiger in the jungle mentality. When something's riding on the line, your brain really wakes up. Well, we can actually do that with creativity. So instead of me creating a scary situation in my mind, I can create a really funny one or a really wild visually one. But what happens is all the other things in that scene are boring compared to the tiger. Your brain does not want to see more rocks, does not want to see more trees. It wants to see something interesting. So, I could say the same analogy if I'm walking through the jungle and I see all these different things and Mickey Mouse is in the corner and everything else is boring. Your brain pays attention to Mickey Mouse. I can't, use that because Walt Disney, sues people. But so that's essentially the principle. And it's how you apply the principle. So, but I wanted to go back and forth with you a little bit and ask you times when you've tried to memorize things and just let you know what's going on in your brain. So there's the active trying to memorize stuff. There's the effort that you have to put forward. And then there is the inactive sort of embarrassment type stuff, the times where you feel like you should memorize something and you're blanking out. So right now, what you're doing with the training is you're practicing the active stuff. I want to memorize this list. I will memorize it. And essentially, we can create little stories out of it and memorize it quite easily. But you might not realize that actually helps you with the other stuff, the embarrassed, blanking out moments. So tell me a moment, a typical moment that people experience blanking out, and I'll tell you what's going on in the brain and probably how to prevent it.
I would have to say that the number one experience would be putting somebody in front of a group of people.
Yeah. And they blank out. They forget what they're going to say, or they forget someone's name. So I'm going to get you guys to do one little exercise. I see a couple people here. So you're going to do an exercise with me. I'm going to tell you a few places that you should know, and I want you to visualize it in your mind's eye and answer some questions. So first of all, your car. If you could visualize your car, what color is it on the inside?
Tan.
Black.
Black. Okay, now I actually noticed it with you, Tom, really quickly there, where your eyes went like boop boop. Did you notice that? You know, I'm going to do this again. I want to think of, and you can look for it as well. I want you to think of your bedroom, and I want you to tell me what how big your dresser is. If you could measure it, how wide would you say your dresser is?
3 feet.
6 feet.
There you go. That's a wide dresser. No, but Tom, did you see it in Carla though? Your eyes kind of went over there, and you go, oh, okay. See, the interesting thing is when we're trying to remember information, we actually look slightly up and to the left and to the right. In fact, most of the time, a lot of times it can be incredibly far up. You can look like this. You're like, oh, what is the answer to that? Where am I going? So you've been in that situation?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So here's what's actually going on. Behind your eyeball is a large bundle of nerves called the optic nerve. And it's about the size of a golf ball, 2 of them, you know, behind your eyeballs. And they're not considered part of the brain, but they should be actually. A lot of neuroscientists would consider them part of brain research. And essentially what we know for a fact, we don't know exactly how all of this works. There's actually a very famous quote from a neuroscientist that said that if we were to distill, you know, if everything that there is to know about the brain was a city, all of neuroscience could be summed up by being essentially a half-drunk person sitting under a street lamp that can barely see around him. That's about as much as we know for sure about the brain. On one city block, if the whole brain is the city, you're like one little patch of granite. Okay, we know that that's cement. We know that that's a curb, and we know that that's a light. There's some very basic things. One of the interesting things that we definitely know about the brain is that by directing your eyeballs in different directions, it actually directs the energy in your brain. We don't know why exactly. The theory is that hunters didn't want to be distracted, so like if they're trying to remember something, they would look up so they're not looking around at things. And the typical thing that a hunter would remember would be like, you know, how to get to the watering hole or some travel from place to place, that sort of thing. But really, most people most scientists don't know for sure why this happens. But when we're trying to remember things, we look up. When we're trying to talk to ourselves and calm ourselves down, we look down. And what happens is when you're stressed out and you're in front of an audience, like you said, Carla, and you're trying to remember something, you're looking down. You know, you start to go, what jokes, right? Yeah, I'm gonna think of something here, right? What is that, right? And you're staring down. You do that?
Yes, that's true. Wow, I never thought about that. And you know what's really funny? As you were saying that, I looked up to see in my memory when I've done that.
Yeah, it worked. It turned out to be true.
Yeah.
So what we can do to help people with this is if you're ever feeling forgetful, you can remember to do this and try looking up. In fact, I've had people write down on little Post-it notes on their computer, on their bathroom mirrors, you know, to say, keep looking up. And it wasn't even a positive thinking type thing. It was if you're ever feeling forgetful, if you're ever feeling stressed, take a breath, look up, and you have greater access to your cerebral cortex and the rest of your brain.
Wow. You blew my mind, by the way.
So it's little things like that make us think about the brain differently. When we realize that something as little as moving where your eyes focus changes everything. I talk to students about this all the time, and students who are in the middle of exams, they've got this exam paper, for example, right, and they're staring down at it, and they stare at the question, and they're like, oh, what is that? What is it? I don't know. Oh my God. They're shielding themselves. They couldn't possibly look up, right? They're shielding themselves. And then they blank out, they hand the sheet in, and they walk down the hall for a few steps, and immediately it pops into their head, and they remember exactly what they were supposed to remember.
That's happened to me many times.
So here's what I want you to do. And here, I'll do a little exercise with you guys along with the looking up part. So you want to take a moment and look up. That'll always, help you improve your recall. The other major thing I want you to do is to do belly breathing. Now, Carla, you know belly breathing, right?
I absolutely know. We end all of our classes with belly breathing. Yes.
So what would you sum up is why belly breathing was so important. I want to hear it from another teacher who teaches it, because I might even be able to teach you something about belly breathing you didn't know, and you could teach me.
Oh, you definitely can. Just spread it. It actually gives your diaphragm a chance to completely expand.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest problems is that we don't exhale. It's not just the inhale, it's the exhale. So if you place your hands on your ribs and you push out until you feel your abs, you're actually exhaling all the carbon dioxide out of your body. So you can take a deeper breath the next time and replenish your oxygen.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Well, the neuroscience side of the the story is that we have two different nerve systems. They're referred to as your autonomic and your automatic nerve systems. So most people talk about it as your conscious and unconscious nerve systems, right? We usually think of that in terms of the conscious and subconscious brain. People think in terms of sleeping and things like that. And that's very true. There's actually a mechanism in the brain that paralyzes your body, a body paralysis, while you sleep, to make sure that when you're, running in your dream, you're not running in reality, right? Supposed to, yeah, supposed to. Some people don't. Some people wander off. I don't know. Is that Tom? Or did you wander off sometimes?
Always.
All right. So here's what's actually going on, and something that might surprise you is that your lungs and your diaphragm are the only, for lack of a better word, the only organ that we seem to have that is in both camps. Now, you could argue that your eyes are too, because your pupils dilate, and maybe during REM sleep, you look back and forth, you salivate subconsciously. So all of your organs do this a little bit. But the interesting thing about your lungs is that I have the complete ability to breathe in when I want to, breathe out when I want to, exactly however I want to. I can control it 100%. But if I don't think about it, if I'm doing other things, my brain will breathe for me. I'm not going to pass out and die, right? At least I hope not. So it's a true subconscious and conscious autonomic and automatic nervous system. Here's why that's important, because when you're stressed out, when you're panicking, your autonomic nervous system, your subconscious nervous system, to deal with the panic, is going to make you hyperventilate. This is a way to prepare you for a fight or to run for your life. Okay, this is not the way to live in modern society. So one of the best examples is, if you've ever surprised somebody, what's the look on their face? They're like, right? That's a surprise look. Why on earth would our evolution and everything make our bodies do this goofy move, right? Well, look at it closely. I'm moving my elbows away from my body so I can take in a lot of oxygen, right? Opening my mouth. That's why people go, right? Why do they do that? They're taking in as much oxygen as they can, because the very next thing is to run for your life in the hunter-gatherer world, in that primitive world. So I'm going, it's because I'm opening up my lungs, making myself look big to intimidate, and taking in as much oxygen because I'm about to fight or flight. So how this is really important is people do this in the middle of an exam. And this is meant to be how you meet a gorilla. This is meant for fight or flight. This is not meant to be an intellectual pursuit. This is not meant to be, I open up a check and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be fined by the government. I'm going, I can't fight the government. I can't run away from the government. So my body is reacting in a very primitive way to very modern things going on. And that's what happens when you start to panic, when you're forgetful. When you're forgetful, you'll breathe more shallowly. You might not even notice it. It might be much more subtle. It might be like, you ever see people like this? They're breathing through their teeth and like,
yeah.
Oh my God. And they're trying to memorize something. Oh, I've got this. It's in my head. Right? They're breathing really shallowly. What's happening is you're building up a lot of cortisol. Cortisol is an anti-inflammatory. It's, it does a bunch of good things, but it also does a bunch of bad things. It makes you very stressed. It's your stress hormone. So just to recap, we got our student in the exam. You've got you, blanking out on stage, same sort of metabolic process is happening. Your body thinks you're about to be chased by a tiger, when in actuality, all the things that your body is trying to do to you is making it tougher for you to do what your job is. So my job is to remember the answer to this question, and my body is breathing really shallowly. I'm releasing a lot of cortisol, which is interfering with my brain's ability to think. And blood flow is going to my muscles, not going to my brain, because it's that fight or flight response. So the best way to reverse this is to take control of those lungs and literally do the belly breathing, do 3 or 4 belly breaths, look up, because it forces you not to look down and be a worrywart. You look up, do a few belly breaths, and you'll get rid of that stress response very quickly. In fact, I do this, and I've got a stressful job. I run several businesses. I've got employees. I do a lot of stuff. I get stressed out all the time. But you stop, look up, breathe 3 times. It gets rid of the cortisol. It is a biological reaction. It is not psychological. It is not. I'm not telling people feel bad about yourself because you're not able to calm yourself down. It's a biological reaction. You've got a really good stress response. Now trigger that relaxation response.
Okay, that's fascinating. I'm picturing myself using it before I go on stage, by the way. So you also let me know that you could help my entrepreneurs out there help their clients remember them.
Oh, yes. How to get people to remember you better. Okay.
Yeah.
So, as you know, with the list technique that you were memorizing there, we give the challenge in the book, and this is also in our event on the 16th. We give the challenge to memorize a list of items, like 20, 30 things in a row, and then you ask people, how would you memorize it? Most people would repeat it over and over and over. But what we do is I take you through word after word, and I just basically make a story out of it. If you remember the story, you remember every single one of these words, and magic presto, you're able to score 3 to 4 times greater on memory tests. Now, this is not just some sort of trick in a group, in a setting, in a hotel. We did this in a double-blind neuroscience study in McGill University. We did this with we got 20 grad students to go through the training. They tried to memorize a list of objects just with rote repetition, didn't work. Then they made a little story out of it using certain techniques and strategies that we teach, and they were able to remember every single one of them just about every single time. Scored 3 times the average on memory. So the question then comes, well, if I have a product, how can I get people to remember me better? How can I get them to remember that better? And here it essentially is kind of some of the golden rules, okay? The products that win the memory contest are the ones that are most sensory and the ones that tie into their name most often, okay? So I'll give you a very simple example here. The Geico gecko. You ever heard of the Geico gecko or the Aflac duck?
Yes.
Yeah? So they are perfect mnemonics. What was that?
Great. Now all I hear is Aflac.
Aflac.
For 20 minutes.
Aflac, yeah. Well, let's take the Geico gecko. Geico was an acronym. It stood for Government Employee Insurance Corporation. It was this terrible thing. They didn't know what it was all about. So somebody said, hey, it sounds like a gecko. Let's try that. And it was almost because they didn't have any previous experience. It wasn't State Farm or anything else. They could do whatever they want. So they went kind of cheesy. And boy, did it work. The Geico gecko is remembered. And it's remembered because it ties into the name. It's a play on the name. And it's memorable because it's an object. If it was the mouse pad or the deck of cards or the pen, it wouldn't be nearly as memorable. But when you have a mascot, that's why a lot of sports teams have mascots, then it's a kind of a character, an exaggerated version. This goes back to the tiger in the jungle. You have to have an exaggerated version of whatever it is you're teaching. And by the way, if you're trying to go after a corporate audience, then you might not want to do this in the same way, because corporate audiences are very, very stale. They're very conservative, but you can still use the same sort of effect. And that is kind of that aha moment. So the Aflac duck's another great example. People remember that because it sticks in the mind, and then it reminds you of the company name. We did this for Farrow for a little while, actually. This was the logo for my company Farrow PR for ages. And you can see it's a little Egyptian pharaoh, right? And we did it all kind of stylish and everything, right? And that actually, we've changed it recently to something else that looks kind of cool. All right, so this one was a play on my name, my last name Farrow, and people want to remember. The problem is that I'm not Egyptian, so it could be a little bit of a cultural thing. In today's day and age, we have to be more sensitive to that. But also, it seemed a little cheesy. We wanted to go a little bit more corporate. So I went with a different logo here. Okay, so this is what we're working on with some of our logos here. So you see the Brain Hackers logo right here. Right. Well, we have a logo with Farrow, which is just an F with an arrow. You see how it's kind of cut out, and then there's an arrow made out of the F and everything. I'll take you off of mute. So
I love that.
Yeah. Now this is also within the brain symbol. So this would be the Farrow Memory symbol, and we're kind of working on those things. But right now, our logo on its own, just that F with the arrow, it goes, Farrow after that is what we're using for our new logo, and it gives that same aha moment. But that's the modern styling. We want to appeal to the corporate audience, so it's a modern styling. But F and arrow, because that's the way it's spelt, Farrow, F and arrow. So, anyways, I kind of did that over and over. You can also see this with Walmart and their love of the smiley face, the happy face. You can see it with McDonald's and the clown. A lot of people are creeped out by the clown now, but back in the day, when I was growing up, that was 60s and 70s as well. That's what made McDonald's huge, because it appealed to kids, and clowns were not creepy back then. They were fun. I have to remind people of that. It was Stephen King who ruined it. We can blame him. And it was. Well, I want to say it was Batman and the Joker a little bit, but let's be honest. Even Batman was campy until Stephen King came out with that, and they were like, "Oh, now we can make the Joker dark." Anyways, I'm a big Batman fan. But there's some other, neat ones. This is a great example of branding the Hershey's Kiss too. Making yourself so here are the general rules that you want to follow here. General rule is you want it to be an object. You want it to be something that people can tangibly see, and something that's more physical, but you want it to have a moment where they get it. So with the F and the arrow, they get it. They're like, oh, Farrow and F and arrow, and it's the negative space. Oh, when they see it, it sticks in the mind, and they never forget that, right? With the Farrow hat, they saw it once I said, hey, I'm putting this head here so you remember my name, Farrow. Immediately it's stuck in the mind. Every sports team that has a mascot, that does that, everyone that works really well sticks in their mind. Now, you might have noticed Geico tried a bunch of different things, from a pig to a bunch of things, but it was the gecko that stuck. So it was a play on that words. So, here's what I really suggest is when you're dealing with people in your names, you can actually come up with little tricks to get them to remember your names. And they don't have to be cheesy. They can actually be a lot of fun. I have one customer of mine who's named Sylvia. She's a Southern lady. So she said in a wonderful accent, every time she shakes someone's hand, she says, just think of silver because I'm so precious.
I like it.
I'm like, there you go. I had another one whose last name was Coelho, Joe Coelho. And you might think Coelho is difficult to remember, but it actually means rabbit in Portuguese. Well, most of his clients are not Portuguese, so they don't know that. But he put a little rabbit on his business card, and it's a conversation starter. They say, hey, why is that rabbit there? And you go, oh, well, Coelho means rabbit in Portuguese. You want to know how many times people call him looking for the rabbit guy, for the bunny rabbit guy, that sort of thing. But the point is, the phone gets to them, and he actually picks up, and that's how he gets the sale. So getting people to remember your name works really well. We have another person named Tina McQuaid, Toronto. She's a real estate agent. She's more of a green agent, so she's deals with like more environmental issues and very green friendly homes. So we made a logo where the T of Tina was made really big, and it was fanned out to be a tree. So it was like, I guess we could call it Tree Namake or Tree McQuaid. But that's kind of a play on the words, and then the logo becomes that tree. And then people were mentioning, oh, hey, I remember you because I remember the tree, and you're the environmental one,
That's awesome.
So that's how you get your name to be stuck. You turn it into a little story, and you have that little aha moment. Now, I'll tell you, some people might think this is silly. Some people might think this is weird. When I used the Farrow symbol back in the day, that was part of the reason I did over $170,000 in sales from one radio show. I did $250,000 in sales on a religious program because we were using the Farrow symbol. People were able to remember the name of the product, and they were able to Google me. So yeah, it's silly. It's silly all the way to the bank. But figure out what it is, for you, right? You were actually talking to me about your name, and your last name was hard to spell, so that's why you went with Coach Carla as well.
Yeah, Coach Carla helps. Yeah, it's all the way across to everything. Motashimi is not an easy name to spell or say.
It's lovely. It's lovely. But it's like, you see that as well. Actors do the same thing where, it's someone changes their last name because it's a very long, complex name.
Yeah.
So
you kind of mentioned something happening on the December 16th. What is that?
Yeah. So December 16th is coming up really, really soon. I actually am going to give a special offer to your viewers here. I will actually pay your way to go to this event because we are in the last minute, the last stretch, and I need 10 more people to go to this event. It is the Sin City Memory Tournament. It is a competition in Las Vegas. It is awesome. Everybody will learn all the memory techniques, and you also get to practice and improve your memory and enjoy the whole process. And in addition to that, it is part of a larger event called Skillcon, which actually goes out to ESPN and ESPN2. It's hosted by a celebrity, and they have all sorts of sports from speed Rubik's Cube, cornhole, frisbee stuff, juggling, all sorts of things, robotics. So you get to try out all these all the other events. They might have a slight fee to that for them. I'm not going to pay for all that, but I will pay for your pass to go to the event, a one-day pass to go to this event, and I'll also give your registration to my event, absolutely no charge. If you sign up, just contact Carla or get it to me. My email is dave@FarrowPR. So Dave at FarrowPR, right there. .com, and I'll get you onto the VIP list. It's a simple little VIP list for a few people like you that we're offering this to, and I want to get you out to this event. It is as a one-time only thing. I don't know if we're going to do this again, but I got to get some attendance boosted in here. So if you know anybody in the Vegas area you want to pass this on to, feel free.
All right, great. Thank you so much. And this is an amazing offer, you guys. So everybody in the Vegas area or even LA, you can drive on over there. It's not very far. I want you to take advantage of this. I'm really excited about going to some of Dave's events in the future. And I want to thank you so much, Dave. I'm about to wrap up the call because it's going to shut me off in a second. But I want to thank you for coming on the call. I'm going to post this video on my YouTube page and on Coach Carla Helps on my Facebook page. So be sure to go there. And I'm going to, would you please message me the information for Skillcon or for this event and this offer, and I will post that too in the comments of the video. All
awesome.
Right? Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I appreciate Tom coming on there live, the only one who was brave enough to go on video with us.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much to all the people seeing this, also seeing this later as a recording. I appreciate it, and hope to see you in Vegas.
Thanks,
you.
Dave.
Hey. All right, bye, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks, Carla.
You're welcome.